Do you, listener, take Potterless to be your lawfully wedded podcast? You do? Great! Before I continue my first ever journey through the Harry Potter series, just a few quick announcements. First, here at Multitude, we are very excited to announce that we have a new 2019 edition of the Multitude Listener Survey. If you go to multitude.productions/survey, you can help us out with a lot of things. Just asking you a few questions about you as a person, you as a podcast listener, you as a Potterless and / or other Multitude shows fans. It's going to help us in a ton of ways. First off, we're trying to do more live shows and we want to know where you are. So it's very important for us to know what cities you live in so we can figure out what kind of tour would make sense. Also, we're trying to do new merchandise. So that is helpful for us to know what merchandise you like, what merchandise you wish Potterless or the other shows had. And also just gives us a better sense of who you are as listeners, which helps us in a lot of different ways, such as getting new advertisers and sponsors, which helps us be sustainable and make this our job, because this is our job and it's kind of scary, but it's really helpful for us to understand who you are as a listener. And finally, you can give feedback on all of the shows. We constantly want to be improving these shows, especially for Potterless, where I'm in this new phase where I'm not used to doing this type of episode and things are changing and I don't have a strict format to do anymore. I want to know what you're looking for in the future Potterless episodes, from structure to topics to guests, all kind of stuff like that. I really want to make sure that I'm making the best podcast possible for you, the listener. So if you go to multitude.productions/survey, it will help me make the podcast better for you. So really, you're helping yourself and everyone else. Look at that. Again, multitude.productions/survey. It won't take more than 10 minutes. I would really appreciate it if you took the time to fill it out. And speaking of things I really appreciate, we have new patrons to welcome to the team. So shout out to Selena Kolozwal, Nick Amon, Kristen Krassy Sassy, Ronald Kikeline, Evan Kleinschmidt, Amy Silknitter, Fire Whiskey and Honey, Anna Karpowitz, Joseph Spaziano, Brea Peters, Yvonne, Rosie Rowland, Brianna Moore, and Francesca. And shout out to Brittany Gutierrez, who upgraded to the producer level status. They joined the ranks of Vicky, Aaron, Jesse, Natalie, Cloud, Frank, Marchismo, Samantha, Juan, Abid, Rosemary, Maria, Lisa, Romina, Kumail, Russell, Audra, Eleanor, Sydney, Roseanne, Nikita, Taylor, Ali, Amelia, Sean, Sarah, Ben, Rachel, Zachary, Orchid, Vivian, Takari, Haley, Moster, Angelina, Ross, Marie, Alex, Brian, Caitlin, Grace, Raul, Ingen, Mari, Alex, John, Noel, Tao, Emily, Robin, Will, Liz, Mariah, Brandon, Sarah, Claire, Gloria, Sarah, Patrick, Alicat, Hallie, Veronica, Kevin, Lotta, Noah, Tracy, Colleen, Jennifer, Friday, Ivor, Naomi, Tyler, Summer, Heather, Vera, Carrie, Andrea, Ella, Anthony, David, Elisa, Lynn, Cameron, Justin, Christine, Jacob, Toothless, Maya, Mark, Polly, Surgeon, Netta, Tumnus, Remy, Matt, Sarah, Nona, Zena, Colleen, Harlan, Sheldorp, Noelia, Addie, Brian, Jenny, Nikki, Kara, Dorcas, Courtney, Kine, Amanda, Sabrina, Alicia, Kafir, Lindy, Martha, Benjamin, Skymart, Sarah, Peter, Yash, Marta, Stephanie, Justine, Aaron, CJ, Eileen, Violet, Kat, Lindsay, Fielding, Keegan, Miranda, Gail, Mr. Folk, Heather, Adam, Christina, Maya, Zachary, Kieran, Heaven, Callahan, Christy, Lily, Wire Warrior, Floor, Siri, Georgia, Vile, Itzel, Mitch, Al, Topher, Peter, Candy, Skyla, Edel, Kelsey, Ellie, Professor Threat, Kelly, Aluban, Maleo, Lena, Daniel, Rebecca, Lee, Elizabeth, Abby, Lika, Michael, Earmuffs, Cara, Tiffany, Kelly, Nadia, Andrea, Courtney, Sparkle Cat, Carrie, Jamie, Lissy, Camilo, Connie, Janet, Mary, Imo, Malin, Anastasia, Jaden, Nedry, Matt, Riley, Will, Zephyr, Artemis, Aluban, Maleo, Brett, Connor, Samantha, Kayla, Lauren, Aurora, Emma, Hermione, Leor, Megan, Out of Context, Liam, Melena, Marcos, Ellis, Steam Nuggets, Hannah, Courtney, Victoria, Marike, Ashton, Can't I, Potter? And yes, I can, who never accidentally turn off the microphone while they're doing karaoke and not realize it until there's only 30 seconds left in the song. If you want to be like one of these amazing patrons and get access to exclusive live streams, bonus episodes, discounts on the merch store, my notes, you can head on over to patreon.com/Potterless. But without further ado, let's get into episode 92 of Potterless, the third look back, covering episodes 13 through 21 of Potterless, guest starring a bunch of people. Hello, Internet, and welcome back to another episode of Potterless, the tale of a grown man who finally finished the Harry Potter series in 2019. My name is Mike Schubert, I'm that grown man, and we're continuing to look back through the old episodes of Potterless, and today we will be starting off with episodes 13 and 14 of Potterless, which covered chapters 1 through 10 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and I was joined by my good Vine friend, David Tress. David, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm happy to be back, happy to revisit this specific section of these books.
Your favorite part of the books.
Yeah, my absolute favorite part of the books. And yeah, just relive them one last time because I can't get enough of this Quidditch World Cup.
Just everyone loves it. It's universally the most acclaimed part of the series. Yeah. Truly enjoyable.
When you first pitched me on this idea, I was like, oh, I love this idea because I think it's so fun because there's so much stuff that you miss on your first read. And I'm sure that the vast majority of your fans, people listening, are people who had read the story and were like very, very interested for you to piece together those context clues, like once you get to the appropriate place in the story. But I was like kind of worried that our section didn't have a lot of that. I asked my friend Kylie, who's like a big fan of the show, and she, like, I'm not very much someone who has like every detail of the books committed to memory. So I was like, I don't know if I could like listen back to our episodes and then remember what I was omitting or like what I wasn't talking about, or like even what was pertinent to later on in the books. But she like reminded me that there is some good stuff in our section as far as like a little bit of foreshadowing and some fun predictions that you made.
Okay, cool. So listening back, what stood out? What were the gems? What were some fun bits?
Okay, so it starts we both really liked the first chapter, which is I think it was called The Riddle House.
Yeah, it's one of the like not from Harry perspective chapters.
Yeah, you get the outside Muggle perspective from this chapter. It starts with the Riddles being murdered, and then the groundskeeper was like held and questioned by the homicide detectives at first, and then they like let him go because of the insane detail that there was nothing wrong with the bodies outside of them being dead. It's like one of this turn of phrase
couldn't
that she
find
uses that just
there was no scars on them.
Yeah, there were like no scars, no like I don't know what's wrong with them, they're just not alive anymore. And so they couldn't like hold this guy, they couldn't convict him of a crime
because there's no way to murder someone except by physically harming them to death.
I don't know, you have no idea.
If you ever poison someone, you can get away with it because it doesn't look like anything happened.
Right. Yes, I have no idea what was happening there. But what we do learn is later on, Voldemort returns to that house, and he's staying there with Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew, and the groundskeeper like continues to live there, and he overhears a big conversation, and that's about like Bertha Jorkins and the Crouches, which is all, I think, that stuff becomes significant later on, and is even like significant later in this section, because there's a part during the World Cup where we meet Winky.
Yes.
And Winky actually is with Barty Crouch Jr. I think he's under the invisibility cloak. Is that right?
Yes, okay. That is true.
One of the fun things about this series is like when those pieces start falling together. And that's definitely like the big one of this section. And then he like escapes. He steals Harry's wand when they're in the box where they're watching the World Cup.
Yeah, this is one of the ones looking back, because this is the whole, you have no idea that he's there. And then later on, when you even learn about him, he's presumed dead. So this is a chapter going back where you can actually see, we actually know there was someone inside of an invisibility cloak the whole time. So that makes rereading this a whole new experience.
Totally.
I do remember one of the early chapter things being, this is the mention that PlayStations exist in the Harry Potter universe. Dudley has a PlayStation.
Yep, Dudley has a PlayStation.
One of the very few Muggle name brand things that gets dropped.
Yeah, it's like maybe the only branded item that like appears in the entire series. Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember anything.
Only real branded thing.
Yeah, right.
I think. Obviously, you've got like the Firebolt and stuff, but
sure, exactly.
Very strange for all of a sudden to very specifically say PlayStation and not video game system, which makes me think it's a little bit of J.K. Rowling as a mom, where she just assumes video games are all PlayStations.
Yes, that was the point in time where like the Nintendo stopped being used as the universal name for all video games, and like the PlayStation became so popular.
Right.
Yeah, because like a big part of the books was that like she wrote them for her kids originally too, so I'm sure she was like, hey guys, I know what's cool, the PlayStation. So she plugs that in.
Crash Bandicoot, am I right?
There's a tremendous amount of recap too, because we read 10 chapters, and I think like the second and third I think are like primarily just recapping what had happened in the series thus far.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they go to the World Cup, and we get like the thing that you and I were both like most hyped over, I think, in this entire section, that we get to see like some of the fun conceptual magic stuff. So we get to hear about the tent, which is like a little dinky like one person tent that you go inside of it, and then it's like this 3-bedroom flat.
Right.
And then there's the omnioculars, I think they're called.
Omnioculars, which are still one of the coolest things in the whole series. That was super sweet.
Yeah, very cool. I wanted to ask you, now that you've finished all 7 books, do you have like a favorite if you could have any of these magical items that JK has invented over the course of these stories, what would it be?
I mean, wand, I think, is the low-hanging fruit easy choice.
Yeah, the wand is hard to beat.
Let's get rid of wand and broom because that's very easy and more of just like wizardry. I think the omnoculars are the top choice. It would just make watching live sports really fun. And basically you would have the ability to be at a live sporting match and not have to pay for really good seats, but then get the experience of having really good seats, which would be really nice. You could sit up in the nosebleeds, but then put them on, and then it feels like you're a lot closer up.
I like imagining you at the Knicks game with the omninoculars, like very smugly, like while refs are reviewing a call, you already know. You're like, nah, I checked it already. Like, I know that was a foul.
Come on, it was a 3-pointer, not a 2-pointer.
Exactly.
Now the Knicks are only losing by 68 points.
Yeah, so we get all of that like fun cultural stuff. That's probably my favorite section of this, because you start to hear about different schools and stuff. That's where they kind of set up some of the schools that you're going to meet in the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, this is the first like real fleshing out of the series, which is fun, and expanding the universe beyond just the school, because the first 3 books are really just Hogwarts. We don't meet too many new characters. And this one, it introduces a Muggle perspective in the first chapter. It introduces the wizarding world as a whole in terms of everyone coming to the World Cup. So the whole wizarding world. You're right, it brings up the other schools. So this is the first time things are really fleshed out beyond magic happens at the schools, and also in these 2 areas where you can buy things, Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley. And this time they really give more depth to things beyond what we've known so far.
Right.
I think that's really fun.
Which it sort of laid the groundwork for the stuff that you get to like move on to with Potterless's future, like the crimes of Grindelwald. That great stuff. Well, and I know that, I think it's rumored right now, but I know that Universal has talked about opening, I think, like a 3rd Harry Potter park at their new like Epic theme park.
Yeah, they're making a new world, which to me is ridiculous because there's so many parts of the existing Universal world that are just unused or no one cares about. Like, is anyone going to Seuss Landing anymore?
Oh,
I don't think so.
I didn't even know that Seuss Landing was a thing.
It's part of Islands of Adventure, just like a whole Dr. Seuss themed thing, which basically all you need to know about it is that it's in between Hulk and Harry Potter world, the only 2 things worth doing at Islands of Adventure.
Right. So it's just something that you're passing through.
100%. So they have all these parts of the parks that could be repurposed, but I guess it's easier to build something new than demolish and rebuild something that exists.
Yeah, but I think the one that is rumored is that I think they're going to do like Paris. Is that right? I'm not sure.
Yes, I don't know. Paris would be interesting. I didn't feel like Paris was that wizardy in the second movie of Fantastic Beasts. I saw it and that movie sucked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel particularly compelled by it. But hey, Disney made a whole Avatar world, so who's to say?
That's true.
Clearly movies don't have to be good to get theme parks themed after them.
Right. It is very funny though that there's like this theme park that's scheduled to be open in like 2024 or whatever. It's like they're like latching on to this I think like kind of universally just at least like a milquetoast kind of reaction from the hardcore fans to it.
No one's really going to the mat for Crimes of Grindelwald. Like it got a 40-something on Rotten Tomatoes and everyone was like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, the Grindelwald heads are not going to show up in force for that. But anyway, getting back to the World Cup, initially when Quidditch was introduced to you, you were kind of interested in it.
I thought it could be cool. Yeah. It's soccer on brooms.
Yes.
What's not to love?
And then we get the most insane Quidditch match of all time because it like so quickly devolves away. Because I don't think that there really is any sort of that narrative within a narrative thing that makes the other matches compelling. Because what's going on is that they're sort of focusing on the match itself, and then they're really focusing on the mascots, which is kind of funny.
A lot.
It's like one of the wilder things in the books, but like one of the main storylines for that match is that the Bulgarian mascots make the ref so horny that he like can't officiate the match properly. And that he like misses all of these illegal plays.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Which is just so funny that that's happening at the like highest level of stage of that sport. So funny.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. The whole game seemed like a way for J.K. Rowling to try to get back at people saying this scoring system doesn't make sense. And rather than her fix it, she was like, no. I'm going to show how you can catch the snitch and still lose in this ridiculous scenario that I will never buy it ever. Where everyone's like, oh, Crumb let his ego, blah, blah, blah. Dog, it's the World Cup. It's the final. It's the most important game.
Yeah.
You're going to do what it takes to win. You're not going to be like, oh, with my pride, we'll only lose by 10. Like, oh, it's so silly.
Yeah. Because it's just something that's so obviously that sport exists for like a single season, and then coaches and teams start to game plan for that specific scenario. And it's just, it makes no sense. But yeah, I think you and I we're both like very, very pro the mascots taking the center stage and just like a mascot
Love that.
war.
Way more fun to watch than Quidditch would be just every country's mascot dueling.
Yes, because it was the Vila were the Bulgarian mascots, and then leprechauns, which is maybe a little stereotypical.
Leprechauns that spelled insults.
Yeah, they did.
Basically the fish from Finding Nemo.
Right, yeah, they were this like sentient cloud of leprechauns that would spell out like lol whenever the Irish team was doing well. And then they go back to the Weasleys' house for another just like nothing chapter. There's a lot of like unnecessary, just like downtime in these early chapters. A lot of just downtime, a lot of just hanging out. They play 3-on-3 Quidditch with like Bill and Percy and Charlie, I think.
I think Hermione might get in the mix.
Yeah.
It's rough. I remember being frustrated by the recapping and what you're saying here, just the hanging out stuff that doesn't matter. Because yes, for the first 2 books, when I made episodes of Potterless, I did a bunch of chapters, but pretty much for the most part in Prisoner of Azkaban, I couldn't do more than 3 to 4 chapters per episode. That held through for Prisoner of Azkaban, but then when I got to Goblet of Fire, again, it was just reading, being like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And especially this section, because the 2 episodes we did, 1 through 5, and then 6 through 10, and then immediately after, it's 11 through 13, 14 through 16, so like it gets right back to it. It's just the beginning of this book really could have had the fat trimmed out of it.
Right, and I think like the reason that I'm sure that you could only do a few chapters at a time for Prisoner of Azkaban is it's like that book is so rich and so loaded. That's like my favorite book in the series.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like really, really well paced and tight and exciting, and just, you know, cool stuff is happening on every page. And then Goblet of Fire is much more, I wouldn't call it a slog. At the time that I first read it, I was just like, oh, anything Harry Potter, I'm just going to eat up. And the more of it, the better. I think that a lot of like hardcore fans, obviously like the longevity of the series kind of bears out that people just like, oh, I just want as much of this as possible.
Yeah.
Reading it with like a more modern sensibility of like how pacing should be handled, it is just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think JK was in an interesting spot because the series really had grown at this point. I've heard a lot of people say that they started with book 4 and then went back.
Yeah.
So I think that after 3, it really probably popped off, and 4 might have been the first book where a lot of people were starting into the series. So I get that she had to do a lot of recap, and then also she had to expand the world, and that's what kind of makes it slow in the beginning. But just that combination is a little rough. And then you've got Quidditch in the mix, and you just have a recipe for, at least to me, personal disaster. But I think that's what made this fun, is when I asked you to be on the show, because I think I had asked you, like, what's your favorite book or chapters or whatever. And I think you said that you enjoyed the end of 3, but then you said, but I really hate the beginning of 4. And I was like, ooh, because at this point, the podcast was so young that I was doing different things where I had someone who was really funny, someone who was really nerdy, someone who was a mix of the two. You were the first person I was like, oh, this would be fun to get someone. I later on did someone who doesn't like the books, but the precursor to that was you, who enjoys the series, doing chapters that you actively dislike. Yes. And I thought that would be very fun.
It is funny because now this is like I've thought and like taken notes on this chapter, so this is easily the part of the series that I'm most familiar with, and also that I like the least. So I do thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I hate these chapters, and now I know everything about them. Oh, man. Well, thanks so much, David, for being on the show way back when. It was a hoot and a half to have you then, and it's good to have you back now, you know, recapping it and talking about it. And it's fun to see where things had gone. And I'm glad to see that you're doing well. And we both tweet about the WNBA a lot, and things are great.
Yeah. That is the other thing that changed. I say like early on, I'm like, oh, I'm not a sports fan at all, and I really don't like Quidditch. And now, in no small part, thanks to your other podcast, Horse, I'm like a huge NBA fan. I'm like obsessed.
Good. It's very good and it's very fun and everyone should listen to Horse. And also tonight I'm going to a WNBA game. I'm seeing the Liberty play the Mercury because Diana Taurasi talks a lot of trash and I want to see it in person.
That's fun. Have a good time, my friend.
It should be good. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining on and I'll catch you later.
Bye.
Okay, so now we move on to episodes 15 and 16 of Potterless, which covered chapters 11 through 16 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and I was joined by a good Vine friend of mine, Jake Kilroy. Jake, how's it going?
It's going pretty swell, Mike.
You had mentioned that listening back, just the stark difference between like where Potterless was then versus now is just ridiculous to you. Like, what kind of things made it clear in the episodes?
First of all, how many people hit me up on Twitter? Mostly positive, and then one or two had been like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And I was like, what is this about?
That's every guest. And anytime I see someone slandering a guest, I always try to go out of my way to yell at them because it's just... First off, it's not productive. Rather than talk about the guests you don't like, just talk about the ones you do like. Instead of saying, oh, I hate Jake Kilroy, be like, I really enjoyed Kelly. I don't get why people have to jump to the negative.
Dude,
but then also...
I respect that.
But also, like, you're being so kind to be on the show, and you did not sign up for criticism of the show. I'm the one that's making the podcast. I should be getting all the criticism. Don't make fun of my guests. I understand not everyone's going to like every guest, but just say nice things about the ones you like instead of mean things about the ones you didn't. I don't understand how that is so hard.
The internet is wild, but also I loved it because I wasn't totally sure what it would take me like a second to figure out what this was in regard to, because it'd just be like, Jake doesn't understand like the broom mechanics of like why things can fly, and I'd just be like, what am I even talking, what is this in regard to? And then I have to trace it back to Potterless because that was so long ago, and it feels kind of like I was on like a friend's dope rap mixtape and then has since blown up super big, and so it's like people are going through like the old stuff and being like, yo, this guy didn't spit too many hot bars. But no, everyone was super sweet. And people would then be like, Jake Kilroy was totally right about Snape. And I'd be like, okay, well, this one's obviously in regard to Potterless. But it'd just be like, I'd be suddenly in the middle of a conversation that would have many people involved on Twitter. And so that is, when that started happening, that's when I was just like, oh, things have definitely changed for Mike and Potterless. And now I use your name at restaurants to get faster table.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll take it. Let it happen.
Yeah.
So actually, like, you listen back to the actual episodes. What kind of fun gems or nuggets of fun were in those 2 episodes we did?
Dude, since then, I might have come around close to you on Quidditch, where I don't think it makes sense, but I still think it's enjoyable. Mm-hmm. But even talking about the game mechanics of that sport, I think I lean towards its anarchy.
Right.
And then also us talking about Ron having like pretty weird violent fantasies, and also like a dark side of Ron starts coming out, like a dark edgy side of Ron.
Was it because he wanted to beat up Victor Crumb or something?
I'm gonna get this wrong and I'm gonna get hit up on Twitter about it, but he's like in love with Victor Crumb, and he doesn't like Cedric Diggory because he's too handsome, and then he also wants to push Malfoy off like a glacier.
Right. Oh, right. He does say that.
He slams the door so hard, I think on the Hogwarts Express, that he breaks the window on it, and Hermione is like,
yeah, he does.
You gotta chill out. And Ron's response is like, he's not getting to me. And it's just like, you just broke an entire window, dude. And then he starts like saying really snarky stuff to teachers and doing like the fake coughing thing. And he's basically trying to become like a pseudo cool kid from like 80s high school movies.
lot of things happening for Ron.
So that cracks me up because in the first few books, he's just sort of like hungry, and he just says things like, wow, golly, Harry, you can't do that. And then it's like, in this one, he's just like,
he's talking about murdering people.
Yeah, he kind of like leveled up like real quick, which sets the tone for him the rest of the series, I feel like.
I think so. Hungry stays throughout, though.
Yeah.
He never loses his hunger.
No, he's like Brad Pitt in the Ocean's movies.
Always needs to be eating in every scene.
Eating.
Right.
Another thing, now that you've finished it, and actually this is like the main thing that I've been looped in on Twitter, is that everyone coming to say that they agree with me that Snape is still not redeemed in the end. Like, that was one thing where everyone's like, the always shit. So wait, what is your takeaway from Snape in the end now?
I just think that he had a very rough upbringing,
right? Okay,
and I'm not trying to discredit it, but I don't think it excuses his actions. I think he was in a tough situation in that he didn't have a lot of friends, and he upset the only true friend he had in Lily, but no one forced him to join the Death Eaters. And I know he's in a tricky situation with the Voldemort thing and the Dumbledore thing and being at the school and all of that. And I can understand even having a grudge towards Harry, Lily, James, whatever. But when he goes out of his way to make fun of Hermione, which happens in the chapters after that we did, as well as his treatment of Neville, the fact that Neville's Boggart is Snape, when Neville has such a ridiculous life going on, you would think it would be Bellatrix. Bellatrix is who basically eternally hospitalized Neville's parents. You would think that would be his Boggart, but no, it's Snape. So it's just things like that where he is just unnecessary. And we see some characters with bad upbringings overcome it, namely Harry Potter. So I don't think it's an excuse. I think I understand it. And I just think he's a shitty person.
Dude, that's the best summary I've heard of that character. And also, Mike, you're very empathetic, and I love that.
I try to do what I can. I've had a lot of conversations with people about it, and I see some of Snape's merits. I just think that the bad outweighs the good. And if you're a 40-year-old man, you should get over certain things. I think he's a very interesting and fun character, but I don't think he's a good dude.
Yes.
He's complex for sure, but I don't believe that there's enough good for people to think like, oh, well, you got to give it. Nah, he's shitty towards children. He's a professor. When you're a professor, you have extra impetus to be a good role model for your students, and he just doesn't do that.
Man, that's a good ass takeaway on this podcast. This is a good PSA.
See how far I've come from, oh, lol, Quidditch is bad.
Mike, you're so wise after reading this whole series.
Look, I read 7 books now, and I'm a genius.
What's the thing that surprised you most about the series?
Oh, man, that's a good question.
Thanks, man.
Oh, Harry being a Horcrux. That I did not see that one coming at all. I never could have predicted that in a million years. I thought that was a really fun plot twist.
Nice.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, that made things a lot more complicated in a very cool life or death way.
Yeah. Also in these episodes, I'm looking at the episode description, is that you started to defend Dobby because at this point I was incredibly anti-Dobby. Later on, I learned why he's so good, and I'm supremely pro-Dobby now. But you're kind of the first person where I pushed back against Dobby, and you defended him a bit, which I found baffling at the time.
I know, dude. Dobby goes out like a fucking gangster.
Such a boss.
I love how even his death, which is brutal, is so cute at the same time. I don't want to minimize it, but it's just like, man, just Dobby was so sweet. It's just he was so pure.
He really was. He comes around so hard for me, and I'm so glad that I'm a big unabashed Dobby lover now. But at the time, I mean, he was annoying in these books before he becomes good with the whole Winky thing, which happens later on in book 4 or early book 5. He sucks up until then.
Oh yeah, and then we got to talk about the whole like house elf liberation of Hermione.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite subplots.
It's an interesting subplot because I feel like it didn't really have as much as a payoff as it should.
It totally didn't.
It was a lot of buildup for something where it never had a big defining moment, except for, I guess, that eventually the house elves really like the kids and they join in on the final battle. But I guess there was a bit of a disconnect between so much spew stuff, and then it was such a long delay before that spew stuff really materialized into anything.
Actually, that's a good point. When you put it in the perspective of Hermione unknowingly doing military recruitment, that I'm less stoked on it. But it's just like, that was one of the subplots where there was like a few things that were just kind of like antics. I feel like that one was one that was legitimately character driven outside of Harry.
Right. Yes, I agree.
Where it wasn't just her like being her responding to something that was happening, even though it wasn't in the incident. It became like this long kind of like simmering thing where it's just like, yeah, Hermione's kind of doing this while we're doing this other stuff.
Also, in these episodes, I know there were 2 other things, one of which it was the first mention of Professor Vector, who teaches arithmancy, who I will still defend as, I want to know more about that class. I want to know more about that professor.
Right.
I feel like Vector got the short end of the stick. And the other thing that I've mentioned in these episodes that I've gone on to say a lot and has become sort of a joke of Potterless is this was the first mention of me saying that I took Latin in high school.
Dude, I was going to bring that up.
What do you have to bring up about?
No, mostly I was like trying to take notes of like things that stood out to me, and I wrote Mike knows Latin with like 5 question marks.
It became a running joke with the podcast because part of what makes Potterless, I think, fun is that I have a lot of different guests, but that also makes it challenging because at the point of which I'm recording, there were some parts in Potterless where I was so far ahead that I will have said things that were in recorded episodes but not released ones. And that comes to bite me in the butt a little bit with some of the recording because I end up telling multiple guests in succession the same thing. So there was definitely a span of the podcast where I told every guest for about 4 episodes in a row that I took Latin in high school.
That's so good.
Because I had to preface it. So then it just became the joke of like, we get it, Mike. You took Latin in high school.
Dude, here it's totally relevant with I destroy as I speak, which we talked about being the most metal thing ever about Harry Potter.
Right. Incredible.
That was something I didn't know. I probably should have read more into those curses. The fact that it's has a real source of language, and me as a writer, that's not good. That I was just like, look at these nonsense words. It's like, actually, this is the basis of all language. Like, well, that's not good for me.
I only knew to look out for it because A, Latin verbs have a certain way of looking, but B, Julia Schaffini was on very early in the show, and when the whole Lupin stuff came down, Lupin's name effectively translates to moon, 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 wolf, moon, moon. There's so many moon/wolf clues in regards to his name and stuff. So I had my ears perked up a little bit from then on out.
Pretty into the phrase Wolf Moon Clues as a band name or whatever.
Ooh, Wolf Moon Clues. That's a good one. Feel free to use that as your band name and credit J. Kilroy. But yeah, was there anything else in the episodes that stood out? Anything else you took note of?
The only other things was us dogging on Malfoy for being the laziest bully in the world.
He's an awful bully.
Yeah,
this book really shows how truly horrific he is.
Yeah, it's not, he doesn't do anything because the way he's presented is super monstrous, but that's also because of his parents being legitimate monstrous people.
Yeah.
And then later on, in Order of the Phoenix, you kind of find out that he's not that monstrous. He's kind of just scared of his dad, which is fair.
Yeah, he becomes a little more complex as it goes on.
Yeah.
I really feel like they could have fleshed that out a little bit better in the last book because there's a few instances of him not being okay with the Death Eater's plan and stuff like that. And it really doesn't come to any defining moment where Malfoy stands up against it. He just kind of becomes not okay with it anymore. And I felt like that was a bit more of a setup towards, again, something that didn't really have a big reveal in the end.
That's the thing. He turns out to be okay in the flash forward. Is he in the flash forward?
Oh, in the very end?
Yeah.
At the epilogue?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's bringing his kid, who he's named Scorpius, to the school, but that's about it.
Fucking kid named Scorpius?
Scorpius.
That's the most metal thing about Harry Potter now. And then I haven't read The Cursed Child.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Okay, good.
A problem with Cursed Child with a lot of the characters is that they kind of reduce them to things where they lose some of the development. So Ginny kind of loses all of her fun, sassy development that happens in 6 and 7. And Draco kind of reduces. He's all right in Cursed Child. He's a concerned father, but he starts off as classic Draco that hasn't matured. So in the beginning of Cursed Child, he's very much Draco like he is throughout most of the series. And that kind of sucks because you would have hoped that given the arc of where he went towards the end of the books, he would have turned into a better person. But then at the start of Cursed Child, he's like, grumpy ministry, blah, 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 I'm Draco kind of thing. So he kind of just reverts back to what he used to be, which is a bit of a shame.
Dude, okay. Man, I'm really curious to know everything.
Yeah, I mean, you can check it out. Cursed Child's all right. It's just the play itself I saw, and it was really fun. The plot is just lacking, and unfortunately, plot is really important for stuff.
These are good. This is another good PSA. Very true. Very accurate.
Hot takes here on the Potterless podcast.
Yeah.
Plot is good. Oh, man. Well, Jake, thank you so much for being on the show way back when. Thanks for coming back now.
Thank you so much for having me. And also, I have to say, building a community around literature, I think, even if it's just the one series, it's a pretty rad thing to be able to do. It's sort of like a massive book club. It's pretty dang delightful.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, obviously Harry Potter already had an incredible fandom and community fostered before I got in the mix, but I think it's been really fun to do something where I can contribute to that community with something where I came in and my whole idea for the show was, because I'm an adult and because I haven't read the books as a kid, I'll be able to bring a new perspective. And thankfully that has manifested, and some of it a little bit is with thinking about things critically and constructively, but at the very least, people are making lots of jokes now based off of the podcast and stuff, but it's been fun to spark that discussion. And like you said, with people that previously were strangers to me and now I would consider friends, just like with me and you and Vine and stuff like that.
True.
You meet people on the internet through this and it's really cool. And then I get to see some of those people in real life at live shows or conventions or whatever. And it's super fun. And it's always entertaining to discuss the series in different ways, and we'll never run out of stuff to talk about, and that's super fun. And like a book club, like you said.
That's rad. Yeah, that's pretty terrific to be able to do. And also it is funny to see posts about Potterless where it's just like, yeah, like you're the reference point where it's like, again, like a celebrity where it's, has everyone noticed that Mike always jokes about this thing? It's just like, and everyone will talk about it. And it's like that you're the focal point. Now you're part of like the lore that surrounds it in some regard. So it's pretty cool.
It is wild. I'm glad you think it's cool. I think it's fun, and I'm still getting used to it, but it's really cool. And I just enjoy that everyone is so accepting. And I'm glad that most people that have reached out to you on the internet have been nice. And I hope no one ever says anything mean to you ever again.
Dude, no, the thing is, like, I should also like clarify that, like, I reached out to, like, the people who would hit me up directly to like tell me I was wrong about certain characters and stuff. We would have like discussions about it, and they all turned out to be dope. It was just like funny to be, I'm like a fully grown man and just like checking my Twitter for like, I don't know, for freelance writing jobs and stuff like that. And someone's just like, you were wrong about Snape, you idiot. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have a long conversation with like this teenager about this book I read many, many years ago. So it's like, everyone turns out to be like dope, but it's just like funny that there was a few that are just like, you're so fucking stupid. I love it. I love that thing about the internet, and also that everyone like has reasons for. Also, there was like good discussions too.
Yeah, there are a lot of good discussions, and it is fun. I have been able to be in that classic thing where someone tweets something shitty or emails me something mean, and then I reply, and then immediately they say, oh, I didn't think you'd actually reply. I actually think the podcast is great. Yeah. I'm sorry. Which I don't process those people.
Yeah.
Who's out here just gonna spew some shit and then tag me in it and then be, oh, I didn't think you'd see it. Just kidding. I'm not actually that angry. Why did you do this?
I don't know.
Go for a walk. Lift a weight.
I'm pretty blown away, dude. Especially like when I used to write for Tastemade, like I'd get so many emails from high school students and like college students, and it would just be like you were raised by the dumbest people alive if you don't think that Dunkaroo slapped. And it was just like, all right, we can talk about this. And it's just like, fuck you, your taste buds are bullshit. And it's just like, hey man, I can see this. And they're like, oh, sorry, I just like, and then like back up, and it's like, I was obviously going to read my email. But dude, that shit cracks me up because it's like, again, there's no like consequence. It's not like arguing about politics or like things that, so like it always, it does make me laugh when someone has like a strongly negative opinion. They're just like, we got to fucking talk about this. And then it's like, you kind of reply to them. They're just like, oh, hey, I didn't know you would see this when I sent this to you directly. What's up, man?
On the flip side, I do every now and then get some really sweet messages where people will say, I bet you're not going to see this, but
Aww.
Which is really cool because then it's really nice stuff. And I usually see them on every platform except for Instagram. Instagram DMs are the worst because they're so hard to sort. And you know how you can react to people's stories? That counts as a message.
Right.
So I'm just in a constant state of having 99 plus requests for messages.
Oh my God.
Because it just, I don't know, I could make a story with a funny joke, like if there's a picture of something violently purple and then I put on the story like, look, violently purple shoes. And I will get at least 50 people replying with just the laughing crying emoji, which that's cool. I'm glad you're reacting, glad you're interacting. I don't want that to show as a message, because if I post that and then there's 30 things of people laugh crying as a reaction, and then message 31 is someone saying Potterless is really good and it got me through some rough times, and I want to read that and be able to respond and say thank you so much, I'm glad the show could help, but then I get lost in the crying laughing emojis. It sucks. So I'm able to see pretty much everything. Instagram DMs are hard, but I try to check them every now and then and to make sure those don't get through. So yes, in addition to people making, oh, I didn't think you would see this angry stuff, sometimes you get positive ones, and those are the best. Those are the best.
Man, again, the takeaway here is that you are super empathetic, and I'm glad that you've been running this little quadrant of the giant fandom. That's extremely, extremely cute.
Thanks, man. I've come a long way from when I started, and I've learned a lot from people who listen to the show and people in the industry and stuff like that. So I've grown a lot as a person from this process, and it's good to have. It's been fun.
I can't wait to see what you do next and what kind of community you build from there.
Let's see what happens. But Jake, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for being on now, and I'll see you sometime soon, bud.
Yeah, I definitely got to make it east, dude. Super stoked to do this. Super stoked to talk to you always.
Catch you later, homie.
Later, bud.
Oh, past Mike, I bet you're really excited to say something along the lines of, and now for our next guest. But before you can do that, we got to take a little bit of time for Wingardium Adridosa.
Today's episode of Potterless is brought to you by Perfect Snacks. Let's say hypothetically that you are creating look-back episodes for your Harry Potter-themed podcast, and you're scheduling a lot of 15-minute recording sessions throughout the day with lots of different people who all live in different time zones, and your schedule is an absolute mess. But you still want to be able to work out and have fuel afterwards, and how are you going to be able to do it on the go? You can't go home and make your protein shakes with milk and powder like you normally do. You need something that you can grab on the go, and you want it to taste good. Unlike most protein bars, what are you going to do? You're going to get a Perfect Bar from Perfect Snacks. Friends, Perfect Snacks sent me a bunch of Perfect Bars in 3 different flavors: peanut butter coconut, and peanut butter chocolate chip. And they are so delicious and so much better than any other protein bar that I've had in my entire life. It's fantastic. You refrigerate the protein bars because they have the consistency of cookie dough. So you take them out of the fridge and let them melt a little bit, and oh, they're so great. They're made from freshly ground nut butter. There's up to 17 grams of whole food protein and 20 superfoods. They combine to create this cookie dough-like protein bar that is nutritious and delicious. And don't let the refrigerated thing scare you. You can take them out of the fridge and they are safe outside of it for up to a week. So it's nice just to have them in there, grab them on the go. If you're on a camping trip and you're not going to have refrigerator access, it's not a big deal. They will be fine. Don't worry. And in addition to tasting great, they're going to make you feel great because they're non-GMO, project verified, they're gluten-free, they're soy-free, they're kosher, they're low GI, and they're made in the USA. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to give it a shot, you can get 15% off your online order from Perfect Bar if you go to perf.bar/Potterless. Again, you'll get 15% off your order for these refrigerated bars if you go to perf.bar/Potterless. You'll get 15% off again at perfbar.com/Potterless. Get those Perfect Bars, fuel up, get some health, get some protein. Don't sacrifice your taste for it while you're frantically recording podcasts today. Today's episode of Potterless is also brought to you by Stitch Fix. Let's say hypothetically that you are frantically recording a lot of different 15-minute segments for your look-back episodes of your Harry Potter-themed podcast, and you don't have the time to go shopping, you don't have the time to do laundry, but it's slowly changing from summer to fall, and you gotta get your fall outfits ready, and you gotta have more clothes. How are you gonna do it and save time doing it? You're gonna use Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix isn't some clothing subscription box. It's an online personal stylist. You get hooked up with a real human being, and you answer a quiz that tells that real human being what you prefer in terms of style of clothing, in terms of fit of clothing, cut, color, patterns, everything that you can imagine. You will be able to tell this human being. They will take this information, put together your style profile, and then send you a box of hand-picked curated items. These items can be from brands you love or brands that you have not been familiar with and you will soon learn to love. They have men's clothes, they have women's clothes, they have kids' clothes. And if you're in the UK and you think, these Potterless ads are always fun, but it's always America stuff, Stitch Fix is in the UK too, so check it out. With Stitch Fix, there's no subscription required, but you can get automatic shipments if you want. There's a $20 styling fee, but that's automatically applied towards anything you keep from your box. So basically, as long as you keep something, no problem there, but you can send anything that you don't like from your box back. They give you a prepaid package that you can put all of the clothes in that you didn't enjoy as much after you tried them on, put them in that, drop it off at the post office, boom, you only pay for what you keep. And if you want to save on the stuff that you keep, you can get started today at stitchfix.com/Potterless, and you will get an extra 25% off if you keep everything in your box. So this gives you the motivation to fill out your quiz really well, tell your stylist exactly what you're looking for. So again, if you go to stitchfix.com/Potterless, you'll get 25% off when you keep everything in your box. Again, stitchfix.com/Potterless, sign up for Stitch Fix and get looking fresh for your transition to fall, even though you're super busy today. Okay, so now we move on to episodes 17 through 19 of Potterless, which covered chapters 17 through 23 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. My guest for these episodes was Rosianna Rojas, and unfortunately, she is very busy with lots of things and said that she has just been turning down everything that has been asked of her of late because she's working on something big, and I know that she's working on a lot of things. So instead, this will just be a fun, quick little recap with me. I listened to these episodes, and I've found some fun little nuggets throughout them. First, I did want to thank Rosianna for being on the show. At the time when I reached out, Potterless was incredibly tiny, and Rosianna is very accomplished, so it was very nice of her to be on the show, and I'm sure she helped grow it, as did every single guest, but it was really cool, and I was very fortunate to have her on, and the episodes were fun. Going back and doing the look-backs, I was scared to listen to old episodes of Potterless just because if the sound quality was bad or the editing was bad, it was going to crush me inside. And what I'd been doing for all these other ones was having the guests listen to it and take notes, and then they have been mostly leading the discussion. The other reason of doing that is I just don't have all the hours in the day to listen to every single one in prep for these little 15-minute calls. So for this one, I actually listened back. Yo, Potterless holds up. Potterless is good, guys. It's
I was afraid that listening to the old episodes was going to be rough and really bad. And there's a few things listening to it that now that I've gotten better at editing, I would change, whether it's the timing of things or cutting out filler words or points where I repeat myself or stutter, things that I can clean up now that I didn't have the skill set to do so back then. Other than that, I think things are fine. The audio quality, once I get the new microphone, is really solid. And even with the original one's not that bad. But let's talk about these actual episodes themselves. It's so funny because the first one with Rosianna, right off the bat, I'm talking about Ludo Bagman and I call him Hugo Bagman. I have learned that this is something that the iPhone autocorrects. So when I'm reading Potterless, usually I have my phone or my laptop right next to me and I have the Apple Notes app open.
Hey, editing Mike here. Yes, I do realize that past Mike just said when I'm reading Potterless. That's a new one. I've called chapters episodes, but I've never called the Harry Potter series my own podcast now. All those people who said that this has gone to my head clearly are correct.
And I'll type in stuff there. And since doing this in the future, I've typed Ludo because now with the infamy of my Ludo Bagman incorrect prediction, I type Ludo a lot. And every now and then they try to autocorrect it to Hugo. So this is what happened here. And that's sort of fun that I messed up the name of my best friend. But what was interesting about these 3 episodes with Rosianna is that it started off with me having all of my eggs in the Crouch basket. I thought Crouch was guilty. I thought he was super suspect. I really thought that he, Barty Crouch Sr., was what Barty Crouch Jr. ended up being, the bad guy in the situation. I also mispronounced Karkaroff as Krakarov. I go back and forth on saying it a couple of times in this episode, so apologies for butchering that one. And these episodes also have the Hermione teeth thing, which is twofold. One of which, Hermione going afterwards to make her teeth look better than they originally were, I think is amazing. And these episodes are where I really staunchly believe that Hermione is the best character in the books. This is the first time where my love of Hermione truly materialized to viewing her as the best character in the series. I even say it in the episodes a couple times that she's the best person in the whole series. But then also on the flip, you get the Snape Hermione teeth thing where he makes fun of her when her teeth grow out way too big, and she tells Snape this. He says, "I don't notice anything different." And it's just so cruel. And I've gotten into this many times, but this is something at the time, Rosianna recording, she said this was unforgivable for him. I thought this was such a dick move and I was very against it. And just as I've gone through and through the series, it just going back to this is one of those things that just makes it really, really hard for me to like Snape. Also, this phase of Potterless was when I was saying sassy a lot, and I was saying that a lot of characters were sassy, and I was basking in the glory of the characters being so sassy. So this was kind of peak that in this episode I was really happy about. Sassy Dumbledore, sassy Hermione, sassy McGonagall, sassy Harry, sassy Ron. There's a lot of sass in the 4th book in general, and this is where I really started to appreciate it because that's when J.K. Rowling really started ramping it up, and I think she's very good at writing it. So I was very excited that this was a more prevalent theme in this portion of the series. Also, something that Rosianna revealed to me is that apparently J.K. Rowling hates writing Quidditch chapters, and it just begs the question, why do you have so many of them? Also, something in these chapters that I completely forgot is when Sirius is talking to Harry about the situation, and Harry brings up the Bertha Jorkins thing, who I also called Bertha Jockings at one point. Again, this is just me mishearing the audiobook. It's hard with British and stuff. I should have been going back to the book to double check things, but I was going back and forth. I was really busy when I had a full-time job and stuff. I'm sorry, guys. My bad. But Sirius talks smack about Bertha, saying, quote, "I went to school with Bertha Jorkins. She is an idiot," which, so savage from Sirius. The second episode that I did with Rosianna of these 3 is when I creeped back more into thinking Bagman might have something going on and being a little fishy. So I started off super Crouch, then I was more 50-50 Bagman Crouch, and then by the end of it I was just very confused, and then you'll see what happens in the future ones. But also something that just didn't make sense was they're doing the underwater task, which couldn't have been fun for anyone to watch because you're just looking at a lake and you have no idea what's going on. But then also afterwards, the fact that the judges are the headmasters from each of the 3 schools is absolutely ridiculous. They should have brought in impartial judges from the ministry or from the other schools, something. It is so wild because this is the thing where Karkaroff gives Harry a 4, even though he did a great job, and he gives Crumb a 10, even though he definitely made mistakes and messed up. It's very silly to me, and I don't get why they were the judges. That makes no sense. Also, there's some back and forth with Harry and Rita Skeeter in these episodes, and there's just some really fun quotes where at one point Rita asks Harry, "Can I have a word?" And he says, "Yes, you can have a word. Goodbye." And that's the end of a chapter, which is incredible. It's such a terrible comeback, but it's so wonderful. I love it. There's also mention of a painting where you need to tickle a pear and then it opens a door. I think it's at the kitchens or something. The twins know about this. And I talked about in this episode wanting to have that all over my house where you just have to constantly tickle things to make doorknobs show up. I think that's very fun. I also in this episode said that I hope the blast-ended scroots were used as weapons against Voldemort and the Death Eaters. I obviously knew this wasn't going to happen, but I had no idea what the purpose of the scroots was. I had no idea that they were going to be in the maze, but I was really hoping that Harry used the scroots for good. Turns out, no. Also turns out that the official artist's rendition of Blast-Ended Scroots is nightmare fuel, and I don't like them anymore, even though I liked them in this episode. This also was the first mention of Maturity Corner. I talked to Rosianna about how Johnny and I like to do Maturity Corner, which is bonus episodes that I've done on Potterless, where we play the Harry Potter movie and we just talk over it. It's like if director's commentary was not helpful and it was just two dudes making very poor puns over and over and over again and cracking each other up. So this was the first mention of that, and it's funny that that now is an integral aspect of the Potterless Patreon bonus episodes. Again, in this episode, I talked about wanting a Weasley sweater. Rosianna mentioned that she had one of the official ones from Universal Studios, and I expressed my desire for wanting a Weasley sweater. And shout out to Charity Williamson, who ended up following through and giving me a Weasley sweater. She has an Etsy shop. If you want to see me wearing it, you can go to the Potterless Instagram and go to March 27th, and there's a picture of me in the Weasley sweater, and I'm very happy. And speaking of the Weasleys, in this episode, I mentioned that I just want Fred and George to succeed. This is when they're starting to lay the groundwork of making what eventually becomes Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes. And I expressed my desire for, no matter what happens in the series, just that those two end up having a wonderful future. And they do. And I'm sure George is still doing great, but my guy Fred, pouring out forever in my heart. I love you, Fred. I'm so sorry, but your joke shop will live on. George is going to do his best. You're in good hands. And finally, by the end of this episode, I was far more towards Bagman being guilty than I was at Crouch. What made me 50-50 was when Rita Skeeter said some dirt about Ludo Bagman, saying that he wasn't a great wizard and he's had some sketchy stuff, and then there's the whole trial thing. So that was what made me a little more suspect of Bagman. And then by the end of it, there's something where Crouch is reported as sick, so Percy shows up to some stuff in his place for the Triwizard Tournament, and my thought was that Crouch was sick because Bagman did something to him to get him out of the way so that he could do evil stuff. So by the end of these 3 episodes, I was more leaning towards Bagman, and oh baby. It's been really fun to do this particular look back and just see my whole transition of this process. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, that pretty much covers these 3 episodes, so now we'll move on to the next one with an actual guest. Yay! Okay, so now we move on to episodes 21 and 22 of Potterless, which covered chapters 24 through 30 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and I was joined by someone who I had not talked to at all before, but now have talked to and met with multiple times, Melissa Anelli from Mischief Management, as well as Pottercast and so many other things. Melissa, how's it going?
Hello. I talk to you all the time now. I can't get rid of me. That's the way it works.
You're in the same city. We end up recording things in person together. We're on the same stages.
Yeah.
LeakyCon.
Mischief might end up in your building. It's a whole thing.
Oh, I heard. I would love it. We'd be neighbors.
It'd be very cool. No, it's when we recorded, you were
quite tiny.
Still very successful, but like way more now. It's not about numbers. Sometimes with podcasts, I guess it is about numbers, but still, it was a whole different world.
Yeah, everything was very different. It was funny listening back just to see like how our Harry Potter conversations have changed, because at the time I was only part of the way done with the 4th book, and you had to be very reserved about not giving spoilers, and it was so fun to hear you have to use restraint to not spoil things.
Yeah.
And now when we have Harry Potter conversations at LeakyCon or at other places, we're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where we are going so in depth about everything that our brains start to hurt, and it's so fun.
Yeah. I'm going to put Pottercast List live up on the Pottercast feed soon, by the way.
Oh, how do I get the audio from LeakyCon?
I'll send it to you. I don't even have it yet. Somebody here has it. I'll get it from them.
So as far as these 2 episodes, you listened back, I listened back. Was there anything in particular that jumped out at you as being particularly funny or interesting or just silly to look back on 2 years later.
I think you said that Rita Skeeter was the worst person in the entire series or something.
These particular 2 episodes had a wide range of me thinking that people were the worst. Rita Skeeter was definitely one of them. Dobby was also one of them, as was Percy. I had 3 separate rants about all 3 of those
Percy, that's the one. It was Percy. It was Percy who you said, and I was like, oh, God, wait.
I made the claim that Percy is worse than Voldemort in this episode.
That's it. And I remember when I re-listened, I was like, not sure I agree, but cool.
Look, we need to separate Percy from Chris Rankin because Chris is wonderful.
Chris is wonderful. Oh, and you also had a view on Snape that still holds up.
Yes.
So now you know the whole story with Snape, and all those things are still true, and he is still a reprehensible human being.
Right. That was the exact quote you said, is that Snape, sure, he has done good things, but he's a reprehensible human, and just because you do good things doesn't make you a good person.
No, and I think that's actually something I like a lot about, people sometimes talk about hating Snape like it's a stain on the series, and I actually think somebody who's a really bad person, you still recognize that they still did these amazing things. Like, having complex thoughts about a person is not a inherently bad thing.
Right. It's not that I think that Snape is a bad character. I think he's interesting. I think me just being anti-Snape is that there's so many people out there that want to defend Snape.
Yes.
And I don't get why. I think Umbridge is an incredible character, but you don't see people out here trying to defend Umbridge. I think Voldemort is incredibly compelling as well. You don't see people out here trying to defend Voldemort. So the fact that there's so many people that want to defend Snape is weird to me because he's bad.
So Snape factors in some delusional dreams. There's this trope of he's just misunderstood. It's because he was abused. And it goes sort of hand in hand with like the idea that the love of a good person can change all that. And so maybe it's the idea of, well, if Lily had loved him, but you know what, at some point you own your choices, and there's no 2 ways about it. In the chapters or near the chapters we talked about, he made fun of Hermione's appearance, and that's just, the end. You don't make fun of a 14-year-old's physical appearance.
No, for no reason. He has no reason to dislike her. And I think the thing is, he did have a bad upbringing, and I'm not trying to discredit that at all, but no one forced him to join the Death Eaters. And Harry also had a bad upbringing. He turned out all right.
Right.
Sirius had a really rough go of it. He turned out all right. Yeah. So
Harry literally grew up in a closet.
Right.
Like, literally.
So I think it can explain his actions, but I don't think it justifies them.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, he's... I'm floundering just thinking of all the many ways that Snape was very, very bad to people. Yeah. And I get it, but it's also like the beautiful thing about the story is that there it is, right? You have people who grew up. Harry says when he's walking into the forest, he's thinking about how Hogwarts was the home of all the lost boys. Voldemort, him, Snape, all the people who didn't have family and didn't have a good upbringing. They found a home at Hogwarts, and all those people made all these very different choices. Voldemort all the way bad, Snape in the middle, Harry all the way good. And it just shows that if all those people had, similarly bad upbringings, then you can't blame their upbringings for the choices that they make. It's at some point you're presented with all the information and you make a choice to hurt or not to hurt. And when you make a choice to hurt, that's where you land.
That's a really fun way to look at it. I've never thought of it that way, of putting those 3 together, and then Voldemort and Harry at the end are at the other ends of the spectrum and Snape's in the middle. I think that's a more helpful way to think about those. I'm glad you said that. We've great.
Accomplished a thing.
As far as other things in this episode, I did learn about one thing. We both were disappointed with the movie adaptation of Moody's magical eye being a strap-on bionic looking thing.
Still true.
Someone emailed me and said that because at the time CGI effects were harder to do, the way that they filmed it was they just put that strap on with like a green screen thing over the eye the whole time, and it made it easier to make the effects and make it more noticeable. So that's why they did that. I still don't think it's great, but that's at least the justification.
They had Quidditch and dragons, and I'm sure it was hard, but I feel like it could have been better.
I've recently been watching the old movies because I'm doing the movie episodes, and the Quidditch CGI is rough in the first 2 movies.
I have to go watch.
Oh, it's bad. Some things have aged really well. Some things still look really nice. But the Quidditch stuff, I think it's just anytime you CGI a human or something on a human, that's really hard. Because there's a name for it where it's the some sort of thing where it's approaching being human-like, but if it's only slightly off, then it's gross.
Right, yeah.
Hey, editing Mike here. This was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't remember it, so once we finish recording, I Googled it. This is called the Uncanny Valley. According to very reputable website Wikipedia, it says, in aesthetics, the Uncanny Valley is a hypothesized relationship between the degree of an object's resemblance to a human being and the emotional response to such an object. The concept of the Uncanny Valley suggests that humanoid objects, which imperfectly resemble actual human beings, provoke uncanny or strangely familiar feelings of eeriness and revulsion in observers. So, yeah, just a more articulate way to explain what Melissa and I were trying to get at.
I think just anything involving CGI and a human stands out more. So when you see what is clearly an all CGI person being a goalie in Quidditch, it looks rough.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that so clearly. The CGI goal is the
terrifying.
CGI keeper. Yeah. Okay, we'll give him that one. Like, fine. Fine. I feel like it could have looked a little bit more magical, but instead it just looked like a strap. Which even like the Muggle version of this is less obtrusive.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. The other fun things about these two episodes is that it was a lot of looking back on these was especially funny because it's stuff that none of it aged really well. So I was very strong on the Dobby hate and you were dying inside because you couldn't say anything, which was very funny. But then also something a little more minor is that you had talked about the Patronus thing, and this was the first mention you had brought up, like your Patronus can switch based on your lover. I think this is awful and I really don't like it at all, but in the episode when you told me that, I was like, oh, that's really cool, I like that. And now I hate it.
Wait, you hate it? You don't like that a Patronus can change?
I don't mind that it can change. I just don't like that. I don't like that it seems like all Patronuses go together. I think if they change, it's okay, but more of the fact that Lily and James have the doe and the stag, and then even Ron and Hermione with the otter and the Jack Russell Terrier, because apparently Jack Russell Terriers chase otters. It makes me think there's this world where you would go on a first date with someone and someone would ask, what's your Patronus? And you would say, a bullfrog. And they'd say, what's yours? And they'd be like, an emu. It's like, sorry, not going to work. I'll see you later.
Well, but if you continue going on dates with that person and then you fall in love, what are your Patroni then? You have no idea. They could change.
I guess.
I don't think it necessarily is that they're matched. And I don't think that your Patronus only changes based on who you love. It just, if a significant change happens in your life, it can change based on that change. That's my understanding of it. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. It would be fun to see someone's change not based on love, just on something.
Yeah.
But I just think that Patronuses should be more of like an individual thing. So when there's some sort of dependence on another person, I think it's a little less fun. I think it should just be you.
Well, it's supposed to be the thing that you perceive as your protector. And for most people, that's a person. But I suppose in a weird world where a Muggle grew up in the future with a robot protector, maybe the Patronus would be a robot.
Why is Hermione's an otter? Did she go to the zoo and have a great time?
I don't, it's an interesting idea. I do remember when learning all these animal shapes. Maybe it's that in the absence of an actual figure in your life that you perceive as a protector, it just gets tied into the protective parts of your personality and how you act. So if Hermione's is that she's, curious and playful and all that. And then
has pockets.
Let me tell you about Hermione and pockets. She definitely has pockets. She doesn't go anywhere without pockets. She's a pockets girl.
And of course, the most famous thing from this episode, the second episode we did, has the infamous, I definitely think it's Ludo Bagman claim where I really put my foot in the ground.
It was really funny.
I appreciate you keeping it together and not just bursting out laughing in my face. But it's been really funny doing this particular set of look back episodes of Potterless because these past 4 or so guests was the 8 episode span where I was just constantly going back and forth. And then with you on this episode, with the trial of Ludo Bagman, I was like, this is it. This has to be him. I know it.
Yep. Listen, Jo is really, really good at a red herring.
She got me in glorious fashion.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing. I think there was something I did spoil you about in these.
If it did, it went over my head.
There was something about Moaning Myrtle, I think, or something about Rita Skeeter.
Oh, so one thing that happened, which you were justified to react this way, I misinterpreted something that Barty Crouch Jr. disguised as Moody said. He said, "I hate to see Death Eaters roam free." And
Yes.
I thought he was talking about Rita Skeeter because they had just talked about Rita beforehand, but he was actually talking about Snape. So you didn't really spoil anything. It was just,
Okay.
I had this weird hunch where I thought that Rita was a Death Eater, and you corrected me.
Listening back, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have told him. I like took somebody off the board for him.
No, it was totally fine because it was less of me suspecting her and it was me just completely misinterpreting it. I said, this reveals that Rita Skeeter is a Death Eater, which is surprising. And you were like, no.
I was like, "Oh."
Which is good because some problems with earlier episodes of Potterless is that I would just say something wrong and then people out of fear of spoilers wouldn't say anything. And then people would write in and say, oh my gosh, your guest didn't know anything. It's like, no, they know it. It's just a really tricky situation for them to be in. So they err on the side of not correcting me.
Oh, I've recently been reminded that if you want to get an iTunes review or if you want to get an email or if you want to get interaction, you should be wrong. Because people love and can't wait to tell you. One person like very nicely gave us like a 5-star iTunes review and then was like, and the whole review was about what thing we said in Pottercast that was wrong last week.
Hey, at least they gave you 5 stars.
That's what I'm saying. That's okay.
I have literally gotten people leave me 1-star reviews because I pronounced J.K. Rowling incorrectly.
Rolling like bowling. That
Someone's
was my
like,
thing.
That was the thing. 1-star review title was Rolling Like Bowling. He says the name
Wait,
wrong
they
and
said
it
Rolling
bugs
Like
me.
Bowling?
That was like the name of the review.
Do you know that that's me? Like I initiated that.
Oh, that's you?
It's so funny. So I said it.
Oh,
I said this
wow.
on CNN in like 2002. So the person asked me, and they were like, "Wait, is it Rowling?" I was like, "Nope, it's Rolling Like Bowling." And that phrase is gonna be in my obituary.
That's incredible. I had no idea that you did that.
We were at an event that Jon Stewart was introducing J.K. Rowling, and he said Rowling, and I heard from the rafters somebody yell at him, "Rolling like bowling." And he heard it. And then there was another time I was on the phone with somebody from Warner Brothers, and literally we were talking about something else, and he said, "What is this rolling like bowling thing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I just got an email that there's something out there about rolling like bowling." I'm like, "Yeah, I said that." He's like, "Okay." It was just so, this thing has gotten, so I love it. I love that it's like haunting you now. It's great.
You got to make that a registered trademark.
I'm sure that registering a trademark with J.K. Rowling's name will go fine for me.
Because Warner Brothers is super chill.
You know.
Good point. But
But we're putting a stake on it. We're letting people know.
but only until very recently have I fully committed to the Rolling Like Bowling because I had like heard of it. I didn't know if that was A, correct, or B, that you said it. But enough people eventually told me so. I feel like ever since finishing the books, I've gotten to the point where if I say Rowling incorrectly, I will retake it on the audio, where before I was
That's
just,
funny.
nah, whatever. But now you know I'm a true Harry Potter fan because I say Rolling and I'm good.
Well, I think real world people have a right to tell you how to say their name, and I think we have a right to pronounce a fictional character's name any way we want.
Ooh, I like it. Has JK ever come out and explicitly said like, hey, everyone's saying my name wrong?
No, I think she has commented once that it was just like it's funny that nobody seems to be able to get, like everybody in America, we pronounce it, wrong.
Yeah.
She hasn't seemed to be particularly perturbed. I think in The Rise, and when she was getting famous, everybody called her Rowling because she was not famous enough for them to check, but she was getting famous and they were doing stories on her, so they were just saying Rowling in all these news stories, and it just sort of stuck.
Yeah, I think that's what really happened to me with recording it, was that over the course of the podcast, I still in my brain knew that it was correct as Rowling, but just when you hear J.K. Rowling my entire life, it's just hard to break that down. It's less so of a mispronunciation thing and more of just my brain associates with reading that word as that way and saying it that way, and it's just hard to fight it. But over the course of this span of doing the podcast, I have conquered it, and now I say Rowling.
Fantastic.
Oh, man. Well, Melissa, thanks so much for joining. What a perfect way to end this little look back, is the big revelation that you are the key pronunciation guide to JK.
That's me. Listen, all you had to do, whether you're not sure whether or not it's right, ask if I said it.
Nice. Yep, there it is. Well, it was so fun having you on the show back then. Didn't you buy a Yeti or something and then immediately return it because you didn't have a microphone? Didn't that happen with the recording?
I did. I was cat sitting for my friend Anthony, and I went to the nearby B&H or whatever store, and I bought a microphone and then brought it back right after we recorded.
I was so flattered by that because at the time, Potterless was not a big thing at all. And the fact that you had that dedication not to just think, I'll record on my crappy laptop microphone or use my phone or whatever. The dedication, I remember thinking, this lady's awesome. I like this Melissa person.
This is the result of recording so many years with crappy audio, and the Plantronics headset from back in 2005 is that you get so scarred by bad podcast audio that you're committed to making sure it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining on back then. And thank you now for being a good friend / colleague / hopefully down the hallway neighbor at where the Multitudio's at. It could be super fun.
You have no idea. We're just going to come over with wine at 5 o'clock every day, and it's going to be a party.
Oh, no, that sounds so bad.
Sounds terrible, right?
That's going to be awful.
Terrible.
What happened to the neighborhood? Oh, man. So I'll see you sometime soon. I'll see you at LeakyCon in like a month.
Oh, God, that's very soon. Yep, we're going to have some fun.
It's going to be great.
Okay.
Hey, editing Mike here. That's going to be the end of this Look Back episode, but I'm excited to do the next one next week. These have been really fun, and we're getting closer to the present, so it's very exciting. But until then, as they say in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, before they tie their shoes, wizard on! If me and Jake talking about the Potterless community got you really excited, there's a really great neck of the community that is the Potterless Discord. For $2 and above patrons at patreon.com/Potterless, you get access to the Discord, which has a ton of channels, from asking questions of me, to discussing the new episodes, to sharing pictures of your pet in Kingsley Shacklebolt's corner. All sorts of fun stuff there. If you sign up for a $2 or above tier at patreon.com/Potterless, you get access to the Potterless Discord. It's very fun. I love it. Potterless was created by Mick Schubert, it is hosted by Mick Schubert, it is edited by Mick Schubert, it is produced by Mick Schubert, as well as Vicky Garcia, Aaron Johnson, Jesse Horgan, Natalie Klobuchar, Klaus Lopu, Frank Chiodo, Marchismo, Samantha Rose, Juan Sanfilio, Abida Med, Rosemary Daj, Maria Lisa C. Keen, Romina Rivadeneira, Kumail Doc, Russell Dunk, Audra, Eleanor Curlin, Sydney Cawthorn, Rosa and Batamana, Nikita Power, Taylor Armstead, Ali Madsen, Amelia Krauss, Sean Montag, Sarah Nink, Ben Silver, Rachel Guthrie, Zachary Polito, Orchid Grower, Vivian the Owl, Takari Arant, Haley Hastings, Moster, Angelina Withard, Rosemary Heise, Alex Bisholte, Brian Williams, Caitlin Sullivan, Grace Riggles, Raul Pineda, Ingen Odstadter, Mari Wynn, Alex Consolver, John Codker, Noel Basile, Tao, Emily Tyrell, Robin Fernandez, Will Barrington, Liz Bigelow, Mariah Noah, Brendan Pickens, Sarah Enslin, Claire Spencer, Rory Collier, Gloria Gillum, Sarah and Patrick Donifant, Ali Cat 29, Hallie Bowen, Veronica Bartova, Kevin Harnoy, Lotta Bartova, Noah Tracy Toya, Colleen, Jennifer Marklew, Frida J. Svensson, Ivor Peterson, Naomi Guglielmo, Tyler Latshaw, Summer Rathel, Heather Fleischman, Vera Colatham, Carrie D. Bagson, Andrea Kroc, Elisa Grieven, Lynn Walker, Cameron Watkins, Justin Montero, Christine Saunders, Jacob Parrish, Toothless Walnut, Maya Gray, Mark Body, Polly Burge, Surujan Thanmegupta, Neda Atabani, Tumnus Moran, Remy Fontaine, Matt Furley, Sarah Shecker, Nona VM, Zena Rosnowski, Colleen Mage, Harlan Haskins, Sheldorf, Noelia, Addie, Brian, Jenny Campione, Nikki Harris, Cara Hamilton, Dorcas, Courtney Hemwood, Kine, Amanda Alfred, Sabrina, Alicia McLaren, Kafir Shaltiel, Lindy Plackey, Martha Madueno, Benjamin Desmond, Skymart 6, Sarah Shetter, Peter Vostenak, Marta Morrison, Stephanie Magnuson, Justine Wade, Aaron Richter, CJ Ochoko, Eileen Gazesh, Violet Sullivan, Kat Yowell, Lindsay Towning, Fielding Lee, Keegan Curran, Miranda Manning, Gail Ann, Mr. Folk, Heather McMillan, Adam Bryan, Christina Walton, Maya, Zachary Davis, Kieran, Heaven, Callahan, Enderas, Christy, Lily Leader Williams, Wire Warrior 4976, Floor Sake, Sierra Scarsfjord, Georgia, Vilay Donner, Itzel Aime Ayala, Mitch Williams, Al Vega, Peter Wyckoff, Candy Kane, Skylar Lilly, Adele Ryan, Professor Threat, Kelsey Ulesian, Ellie Hoskovchova, Kelly Maynard, Luban Maleo, Akinwande, Lena Karen, Daniel Fulkerson, Rebecca Todd, Lee Lily, Elizabeth Christofferson, Abby, Lika Faccio, Michael David Yordi, Nice Earmuffs Potter, did your mom make them for you? Cara Hoyer, Tiffany Cottrell, Kelly Otilio, Nadia Vansgard, Andrea, Courtney Telfer, Galactic Sparkle Cat, Carrie Crumpler, Jamie Kingston, Lissy, Camilo Garcia, Connie Bienkowski, Janet Noel Detilly, Mary Matille, Imo Sarah, Jennifer Wendt, Mylan Ilstad Johansson, Anastasia Blake, Jaden Allman, Nedry OS, Matt Barger, Riley Lane, Will Huser, Zephyr Lawrence, Artemis Peters, Brett Clausen, Connor Snell, Samantha Lenz, Kayla M. Simino, Lauren Wainwright, Aurora Fruhoff, Emma Clark, Hermione Snape, Liar Nakam, Megan Dick, Out of Context 69, Liam McCormick, Milena Brandy, Marcos Zepeda, Ella Robertson, Hannah Zeters, Courtney, Victoria McCormick, Marika Rieger, Brittany Gutierrez, Ashton Gabrielson, Steamed Nuggets, can't I, Potter? And yes, I can. Web design by Kelly Beckman, audio assistance from Brandon Grugel, and the music is by Bettina Campamanes. If you want to find us on social media, you can at facebook.com/Potterless, twitter.com/PotterlessPod, instagram.com/PotterlessPodcast, and reddit.com/r/Potterless. For more information on the show, you can go to PotterlessPodcast.com. For merchandise, you can go to bit.ly/merchon. And for bonus episodes and bonus content, you can go to patreon.com/Potterless. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, as they say in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, wizard on!